a little bit today about exercise because I want to try to bring in other interventions that can make a difference in cancer's ability to obtain the necessary fuels that it needs. Now, just as a reminder, this is video 62 in a long series named Cancer as a Mitochondrial Metabolic Disease. So if you're just starting with this particular video, we are happy to have you, but you may be well served if you were to watch this video called How Metabolic Therapy Checkmates Cancer. Without further ado, let's get into it. So I want to start out with this particular study that was published in 2022 titled Physical Exercise and Tumor Energy Metabolism. And it says here that here we specifically discuss the metabolic changes found in tumors and how exercise can contribute to anti-tumoral effects by modulating the mitochondrial function and the TCA cycle metabolites of cancer cells. The effect of physical exercise on tumor metabolism is a new possibility for comprehension of cancer biology and developing therapies focused on tumor energy metabolism. So we have a pretty cool graphic here, and it's showing, these two cartoons running essentially, and it shows that there is a decrease in tumor hypoxia-inducible factor stabilization, as well as a change in the overall energy substrates available to tumors. And these metabolic changes can actually shut off some of these growth pathways and signaling pathways that maintain the tumor status quo. And in this next paper, titled An Exercise-Induced Metabolic Shield in Distant Organs Blocks Cancer Progression and Metastatic Dissemination. And it says here, we report that exercise induces the metabolic reprogramming of internal organs that increases nutrient demands and protects against metastatic colonization by limiting nutrient availability to the tumor, generating an exercise-induced metabolic shield. Proteomic and ex vivo metabolic capacity analyses of murine internal organs revealed that exercise induces catabolic processes, glucose uptake, mitochondrial activity, and GLUT expression. Proteomic analysis of routinely active human subjects' plasma demonstrated increased carbohydrate utilization following exercise. Significance: exercise protects against cancer progression and metastases by inducing a high nutrient demand in internal organs, indicating that reduced nutrient availability to tumor cells represents a potential strategy to prevent metastases. Now, I want to take a second here because I want to kind of break down what this first paper is saying. It's saying that there is an increased glucose uptake, mitochondrial activity, and GLUT, or these glucose transporter expression. And what they're talking about is actually increased mitochondrial function, increased glucose uptake and utilization by healthy cells, not by cancer cells. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the issues with cancer cells is they upregulate their glucose uptake and utilization machinery, but they have no mitochondrial function, essentially, and they have to use glycolysis or the Warburg effect, right? And what this is saying is that because you're exercising, the other parts of the body start to upregulate their own ability to take the extra glucose and nutrients out of the bloodstream for its own utilization, which ultimately will rob the tumor and starve the tumor of the nutrients that it needs. Pretty cool. And the second paper titled Running to Outcompete Metastases. And it says systemic metabolic reprogramming of organs induced by exercise leads to a decrease in melanoma growth and progression as healthy organs are able to outcompete melanoma cells for nutrients. Exercise led to systemic metabolic changes in carbohydrate metabolism, glycolysis, and oxidative phosphorylation, as well as mitochondrial biogenesis. Interestingly, the metabolic shield created by exercise could be reversed using the mTOR inhibitor rapamycin. So this brings up an important point of really no metabolic pathway being all bad or all good. We know that the PIK3, AKT, mTOR pathway is heavily involved in cancer progression and growth. However, in this paper, it's talking about the need for mTOR to be signaled by exercise so that the other parts of the body can upregulate their own internal machinery and steal the glucose and nutrients away from the tumor cells. So therefore, again, it's not about being all good or all bad. It's about timing. It's about how it's activated. And also the fact that it's not activated continuously like in cancer cells or the tumor microenvironment. So the graphic associated with these papers is pretty cool because you see that there is exercise going on, running, swimming, biking, yoga, weightlifting, etc. And there are a whole host of important signals through inflammation, through cytokines, myokines, adipokines, etc., that lead to a normalization of angiogenesis. But I think what's in particular interesting for me for this particular talk, because we're talking about substrate utilization in the form of glucose and subsequently glutamine, as you see here in this part of the graphic, it says glycolysis, glucose, and lactate are reduced in the tumor microenvironment and in the tumor cells. Oxidative phosphorylation is trying to be upregulated in these broken mitochondria, and it's having an effect on the tumor microenvironment. And in particular, what's probably most important for the tumor microenvironment is the decrease in lactate, which then is able to actually upregulate the ability for the immune system to actually function better. The other thing I want to mention is right here, it says that there's intratumoral blood perfusion is increased, which ultimately decreases tumor hypoxia and the stabilization of hypoxia-inducible factor. As we know, hypoxia-inducible factors are critical for maintaining the various vicious snowballs that prevent normal metabolism and keep the cancer cell in a pathologic state of metabolism. And that's going to help decrease metastases and also lead to decreased treatment resistance with conventional therapies. So what really got me onto this kind of rabbit hole is I remember watching a video from Dr. Seyfried and him talking about the only way that you can really decrease glutamine outside of dawn is prolonged water fasting and exercise. And I wanted to look and find those studies, in particular with exercise's effect on glutamine, and I was able to find a couple pretty cool studies. So the first one was published in 2020 and is titled Exercise-Mediated Lowering of Glutamine Availability Suppresses Tumor Growth and Attenuates Muscle Wasting. And it says here, in this study, we hypothesized that lowering systemic glutamine levels by exercise may starve tumors, therefore contributing to the inhibitory effect of exercise on tumor growth. We demonstrate that limiting glutamine availability, either pharmacologically or physiologically by voluntary wheel running, significantly attenuated the growth of two synergic murine tumor models of breast cancer and lung cancer, respectively, and decreased markers of atrophy signaling in muscles from tumor-bearing mice. In continuation, wheel running can completely abolish tumor-induced loss of weight and lean body mass, independent of the effect of wheel running on tumor growth. In conclusion, our data suggests that voluntary wheel running preserves muscle mass by counteracting muscular glutamine release and tumor-induced atrophic signaling. So pretty cool. What they're basically saying is that they believe that when you exercise, not only as we saw in prior studies, where it's robbing the system of glucose, it's also robbing the tumor of glutamine as well. And it's actually kind of like reversing the cancer cachexic process. Remember, part of the issue is that because these tumors are taking in so much more glutamine than the rest of the cells, 10 to 30 times more, they're actually robbing other parts of the body of the amino acid glutamine. And one of the organs that require this, other than the immune system and the gut, are the skeletal muscles. And so when you put your skeletal muscles under stress with exercise, you essentially shift the balance where the muscles start to take in more glutamine than the tumors, which actually ultimately ends up starving the tumors of the glutamine they need. And we know from all the study we've done so far how critical that could be to tipping the scales of balance in our favor, not the tumors. I want to reiterate that we have a lot more power over our health than we realize. And some of the interventions that we talk about and we're going to talk about on this channel can be somewhat difficult to obtain, both due to limited availability in the marketplace, but also just frankly cost. Some of these interventions are extremely expensive. However, I do want to highlight some things that we can do in particular that doesn't cost a single thing. Things like the sun, things like exercise, things like fasting, as well as a whole host of other things that we'll talk about in the near future. And it's easy to get caught up with some of these things and all the other benefits they provide. For example, like it's very hard to find studies that talk about exercise, in particular with glucose and glutamine utilization. But because we're talking about cancers and metabolic disease, I wanted to find information that was specific to those nutrients. But there are a whole host of other factors that it does, whether it be boosting your immune system or other things that it does. And so my point is, it's easy to get overwhelmed with all of the things that some of these interventions do. But I think that if we can keep our eyes focused on the prize, which is what is going to have the biggest bang for the buck at limiting availability of tumor cells to have the substrates they need, that they require for not only their maintenance of survival, but also growth, proliferation, invasion, and ability for metastatic spread. If we can keep our eyes on the ball, we're going to start to see what interventions are going to be the most high yield and have the most effect on metabolic therapy as a whole. If you like videos like this, please like,